So, the United States plays again, this time against Japan. And the bar is low. The bar is actually extremely low. I don't think it can go any lower. And listen, many say I am too optimistic, even delusional at times. Many say I'm the most optimistic US men's national team fan out there. So let me tell you something that will make you feel better. Let me bring it to you. Let me bring my optimism to you. And listen, pay attention. I know that you, and even myself, we currently hate the current state of the US men's national team. But try to enjoy every second of it. You know why? Because it can most certainly get worse. Hello. If you're new here, I'm Filippo, and welcome to Tactical Manager TV. And today we have a United States versus Japan match preview. This is how it's going to go. First, we're going to go through when and where to watch this game and some fun facts about both teams. Then I'm going to give you the United States projected starting 11. Not mine. I'm not going to give you mine because at this point, who cares? But don't worry. In a week or two, we'll make a video, or I'll make a video here of how I would set up the US men's national team. Again, it doesn't really matter, but I'll do it. Then for the Japan section of this video, we're going to have a special guest, Sean Carroll, an expert in Japanese soccer. And for his section of the video, we're going to dive into the national team and even quickly talk about the J-League and how Japanese fans see it. Okay, so now sit back, relax, hit the like button, because if you do not hit the like button, the United States will lose. Who am I kidding? There's no witchcraft that can save this team. Maybe an exorcism from the Pope himself in the Vatican, something like that might help, but the like button will not interfere in the result of this game, but you should do it anyway because it helps the channel and I appreciate it. That's all. Let's roll the intro and let's start the episode. The United States is set to face Japan this Tuesday, September 9th at 7:30 p.m. Eastern Time. The game will take place at the Lower.com field at Columbus, Ohio. If you're in the United States of America, you can watch this game on TNT, Telemundo, HBO Max, and Peacock. So you got plenty of options. And of course, as always, we will be doing the live watch along here on YouTube at Tactical Manager TV. So if you want to join us, Spicy Jeff gave me a call. I talked to him. He said he'll behave. He sold his van. He got rid of his van. And he will be at his best behavior during the live watch along. I promise. Actually, I can't really promise that. The US and Japan have faced each other only 3 times throughout history, with 2 Japanese wins and 1 American win. Now, the last time they faced each other was in September of 2022, when both teams were actually preparing for the World Cup in Qatar. Japan for that game completely ran over the United States with a 2-0 win, which felt like it could have been 3, could have been 4, possibly even 5 for Japan. Now, sure, the lineup that Berhalter put out was a monstrosity. We had players like Jesus Ferreira starting, Aaron Long and Walker Zimmerman were the 2 center backs, Sam Vines was the left back, and it was bad. But it doesn't mean the lineup on Tuesday will be much better, whatever Pochettino puts out there. We'll talk about that soon. But before we talk about the lineup that Pochettino might put out to face Japan, here's what we want to do. If the United States puts you to sleep, you probably need something to keep you asleep. And that'll be the sponsor of this video, Manta Sleep. Before we continue, a quick word from our sponsor. We'll be back in 60 seconds. And this video is brought to you by Manta Sleep. And listen, I know there's a lot of soccer games that can put you to sleep, and even myself. But this right here is what keeps me asleep. And understand, I actually was never really a big fan of sleep masks in general, because most of them are kind of crap. They're not very comfortable, they bother my eyelids, and they're actually not very dark. They don't make it as dark as I would want it to be. But this one actually covers all of that. It is very comfortable for myself to sleep. I don't even feel like I'm wearing it at times. It doesn't really hit my eyelids. If you look at the inside, it doesn't do that. And it's actually extremely dark. That is not a problem anymore. Now, it's not just for when you're at your house, right? You can buy these, and when you're going to travel and you're in a very long flight, someone next to you might turn on the lights to read a book or do whatever. You just put these on and you're fine. And we all need our beauty sleep. We need to sleep 7 to 8 hours a night, and being dark obviously helps. If you don't get your beauty sleep, how are you going to look like taller and better looking Tom Cruise like myself? Now pay attention. If you use the promo code TMTV, the link in the description, you will get 10% off your sleep mask at Manta Sleep. So use our code TMTV, link in the description, and it's free shipping in the United States of America. So thank you, Manta Sleep, for sponsoring this video. Okay, we are back. And now we're going to talk about the United States, the U.S. men's national team. Before we even bring our guests to talk about Japan, I want to go through updates, injuries, projected starting 11, and much more. So in terms of injuries, it seems like Noah Kai Banks picked up a knock during practice. That's why he wasn't available against South Korea. He didn't even make the bench. And at the time of this recording, he is questionable to be available against Japan. Besides that, everyone else should be fine. I guess Weah was cramping up at some point against South Korea, but he should be fine to play against Japan. And yeah, that's the update for now. Now listen, let me go quickly through the starting 11 that he put out against South Korea, and then I'll give you the projected starting 11 to face Japan. So against Korea, he went with Matt Freese on goal, Dest and Arfston as the two fullbacks, Ream and Tristan Blackman as the two center backs. For some reason, Blackman was there. Tyler Adams and Sebastian Berhalter played in the double pivot of the 4-2-3-1. For some reason, Sebastian Berhalter is one of his favorites. It seems like Pochettino loves Sebastian Berhalter. Diego Luna was the central attacking midfielder. He didn't really play well. Tim Weah played on the left wing. Christian Pulisic played on the right wing. And Josh Sargent played up top. That's another player that didn't play well, regardless of the excuses of not getting service. Now, later in the game, he did go with a back three with Richards, Ream, and Blackman. So we could see that against Japan. But most likely, he's going to start the game against Japan with a 4-2-3-1. Pochettino's not really known for being bold or for being, flexible with his tactics. Okay, so this is what I think the projected starting 11 in a 4-2-3-1 will be against Japan. Matt Freese on goal because that's his number one, and probably right now he actually is the best goalkeeper we have. Serginho Dest will likely be the right back, and Arfston will likely be the left back once again. Ream and Richards should be the starters this time around. I think we have seen enough of Blackman. And even if Noah Kai Banks is available, I don't really expect him to start. Tyler Adams and Sebastian Berhalter will likely start once again because Pochettino loves Sebastian Berhalter, and Tyler Adams should be a starter. Christian Pulisic probably will be the central attacking midfielder, the 10. Zendejas, that actually played well off the bench against Korea, will start on the right wing. Tim Weah will probably start on the left wing once again. And Balogun, that played much better than Sargent on limited minutes, clearly a better player, will likely start up top. Now listen, before I bring the guest to talk about Japan, Sean Carroll, let me just tell you a few things. We recorded this portion of the video with him before Japan faced Mexico. The same day the US played South Korea, Mexico and Japan clashed. That game ended 0-0, and to be honest, Japan didn't really play well. Now, that can happen, and mind you, Mexico is a better team than the United States right now. But for this specific draw, the 0-0 draw with Mexico, I did not think Japan played well, which kind of sucks because that means they might want to, overcompensate for that performance against us. And listen, Japan is clearly the better side when compared to South Korea. They're more technical, they have more quality, they have more depth, their bench is definitely better. They just ain't as physical as South Korea. I think also the Korean players are a bit bigger. And, if we give as much time and space as we did to South Korea against Japan, things will get ugly. They will get hideous. You have to put pressure on the ball. The defense has to be compact. If we don't put any pressure on the ball and we give them time and space, it could easily become a 3-4, 5-0 win to Japan. Now we're going to bring Sean to talk about the Japanese national team. And as I said, the portion that was recorded with him was before Japan played against Mexico. Not that it really matters based on what he's going to tell you about the Japanese national team, but I just wanted you to know. Make sure to drop a like in this video because I will not be requesting during the section with our guest. And that's all. Let's bring in Sean. Okay, Sean, welcome to the channel for the first time. Japanese soccer or football expert. Thank you very much for taking the time.
No worries at all. You can use soccer or football. I'm not that fussed either way.
Okay, here at the channel, if I use football, we're gonna think we're talking about something else. But depending on when I'm a guest somewhere else, if I use the S word, they don't like the S word, so I have
Yeah, well,
to.
it's 2025. There's a lot of weird people out there. Sadly, we have to put up with them.
It's a good way to put it. But Sean, let's dive into the Japanese national team. A national team that's been drastically improving every cycle, from my understanding. Right, I don't watch it as closely. I mainly follow Japan when the World Cup shows up, and in the last World Cup, Japan kind of showed the world what they can do. They
Mm.
defeated Spain. They defeated Germany. They surprisingly lost to Costa Rica. But let's forget about that for a second. And then lost to Croatia in the round of 16 on penalty kicks. The same Croatia that knocked out Brazil. Is this during this cycle? Has there been any improvement, and is Japan ready to take that next step and actually shock the world in the 2026 World Cup, or it's going to be the same old as the past few?
Um, it's hard to know with the way the qualifiers work. They're obviously the one of, if not the best team in Asia. So qualifiers don't exactly give them the biggest test to know how far they've come on or not gone on. I think technically, tactically, mentally, they're the best place of any Japan team so far to take that next step. Um, but the next step they want to take is incredibly, incredibly hard. I mean, to get into that next bracket of, like you said, they lost to Croatia, who then went on to beat Brazil. That's the level of opposition you're playing once you get through the group stage. With everything being expanded now, so many more teams. In order for them to get beyond the round of 16, which is the furthest they've got, they need to win two knockout games. So much of it is up in the air. But when you look at the squad now, essentially the whole squad is going to be playing in Europe at a high level. Some of them at the very best level, and have been doing so now for several years. So they're the best place to do it, but that's no guarantee that obviously they will go on to do so.
Sean, let me get your opinion on one thing that is more of like a hot debate here in the United States when they talk about national team, MLS, and players in Europe. Because just like Japan, the United States has a good chunk of players playing at a high level in Europe. I'm sure you're familiar with many of them.
Mm.
In Japan, is there a strong push for the Japanese players to leave the J League and go to top European leagues? And on top of that, is there any backlash when J League players get called in?
Um, I would say yes and no to the two questions. There's a push. Obviously, all the players want to go to Europe. Almost every weekend, when you speak to players after games that are here that are doing well, at some point they mention how they want to go play in Europe. For the clubs too, there's still a sense of some kind of pride that their players will go over to Europe and hopefully be successful. Even for fans here too. On the whole, there's no real anger when these players go to Europe because there's this underlying understanding that everyone knows that's where the best football is happening. Um, when J League players get called into the squad, no, not really. I don't think there's any kind of backlash. I think people are obviously happy and they're proud when players from their clubs are called up. Obviously, there's then the question of are they at the required level?
Mhm.
The squad that is now playing these two friendlies against Mexico and America, there's a few sort of domestic players as well. One of them, Araki, the centre back, was sort of in a comment that they put out from the JFA social medias a couple of days ago. He was saying, "Look, I still consider myself to be down the rankings. I need to use this chance to show I'm good enough to be playing for the national team." So I think there's still that mixture, but I think once it comes to the World Cup, I'd be surprised if there was more than two, maybe three players from the J League in the final squad. I think it would all be players in Europe because these players that are in the squad now that are domestic, they'll be seeing this. Their agents will be seeing this as a chance to show, look, he's a national team player. He can get this move to Holland, to Germany, to Belgium, England, wherever.
Seems like a more rational approach. It's one thing we talk about here very often where just because a player is in a top European league, it doesn't mean he's better than a player in MLS or
No.
the J League, but most cases they are. Most, not all.
Yeah,
Because again, for him to get there, he was scouted by these clubs and they believe that he is good enough to play there. Of course, clubs make mistakes, right? But
I think it ends up being more for the Japanese players. It's more once they've been there for a while, they gain things that they cannot gain in Japan, not just on the pitch, not just in terms of tactically and whatever. they gain a mentality, they gain a belief that they can compete at that level. I think there's still, maybe not so much now, but certainly when I first moved here 15, 16 years ago, there was this feeling that the players themselves in the J League felt there was this huge gulf between them and these European leagues.
Hmm.
And I think that's slowly disappearing. They're realizing it isn't actually that big a difference. And I think the longer that players are there, obviously, like you said, some players it doesn't work out. Sometimes they're not quite cut out for Europe. But once they're there for 2, 3 years and they realize actually we're just as good as these players from England, from Senegal, from Mexico, from wherever they've come in the world to play there, they lose that sort of feeling of inferiority, or whatever you want to call it. And I think that is what's helping Japanese football as a whole develop. And that's certainly what's behind the development of the national team, that once they get to the World Cup, they're not scared to play against Spanish players, German players. If anything, the defeat against Costa Rica maybe came because they switched off a bit and thought, well, we've beaten, I think it was Spain was the first win, right? We've
I
beaten
believe
Spain,
so.
so we should be fine. And then they maybe took Costa Rica a bit too lightly. So I think in that sense, it's more the mentality side that the Japanese players benefit for sure.
Interesting. In the US, it's so funny how in the US it's like the opposite, almost like previous American generations that were more MLS heavy. They had that underdog mentality and they would pull up some crazy results like beating Spain in '09 Confederations Cup. Even though we tied England again, but we tied England in 2010, right?
Mm,
With much worse teams, or getting out of the group with Germany, Portugal, and Ghana in 2014, the same Germany that won the World Cup. And then the current one, even though they are better players playing in Europe, the Pulisics and all those guys. Um, it seems like something is missing. Maybe it changes by the World Cup. But Sean, I don't want to get caught into like this whole MLS J League talk too much because it's something off topic. It's just that when you mentioned that, I just wanted to get a take
no,
from
no, no,
someone
no
from
worries.
Japan. So these are the last few games Japan played. You talked about World Cup qualifying in Asia, that it's not the best opposition, similarly to the US and Mexico here in CONCACAF, which when you're beating up Trinidad and Tobago, Guatemala, you don't really know. It's like, oh, we played well against these teams. What does this mean? We don't know. Japan had some interesting results here because they beat teams that I'm assuming they're supposed to beat: Indonesia, China, um, and then Japan tied Saudi Arabia at home. I'm assuming this is not a great result. They lost to Australia 1-0 in Australia. Australia is a tough team, and then they ran over Indonesia again. And then we're recording this before Japan plays the friendly against Mexico, which
Mm.
right now Mexico is the best team in CONCACAF until proven otherwise. Out of these results, is there any context here? Has Japan been struggling or not really? There's not much to read into.
No, there's absolutely nothing to read into. They'd already qualified
Got it.
before Saudi Arabia. Saudi Arabia is a decent team. They came to Japan essentially playing for a 0-0. It was bizarre because Saudi Arabia still needed to try and qualify. And their coach in the press conference afterwards was kind of asked, why didn't you try and attack at all? Why didn't you do anything? And he was basically just saying we came to get a 0-0 draw. We would have taken a point before. We're delighted we did with how good Japan have been in qualifying. So that game, yeah, Japan had already qualified and they came up against almost a 10-man defense. And then the one against Australia, I was at that game down in Perth. He basically sent a third string team. I wouldn't even say it was a B team. He sent a lot of players. I forget how many made debuts. I've got a feeling it was about 7. And they totally outplayed Australia as well, even with the third string. Australia scored very late on and stole the win. I mean, I was sat in amongst the Australian journalists, and they were just laughing at how bizarre it had been. They got outplayed in both games in the qualifiers. They picked up a draw in Saitama. I've got a feeling it was an own goal from Taniguchi, the game in Japan, and then they snuck the 1-0 in Perth. So Japan's not. There's not been any kind of slump. I don't think there's been any sort of drop off in form. There's definitely, as you said, there's some context to be added to those results.
And
Um,
sorry, you had
no, no,
something
that's
else?
that's it.
Oh,
Yeah.
so I brought up the lineup against Saudi Arabia that you said. I'm assuming this is more. This is not a third string team or B team or whatever. For the most part, there's some very recognizable names there. I see
Hmm.
Kubo. I see Zion Suzuki. I see Endo. I see Kamada, Maeda up top, Ito. These are players that anyone that follows European soccer closely, they should be familiar with them to a certain extent.
Hmm.
It looks like Minamino wasn't there, or maybe he was on the bench. For the United States game, is Japan bringing mostly their best players? Is there any key players missing? Are they taking these friendlies seriously now in preparation for the World Cup, now that they're facing opponents outside of Asia? What's the outlook for this game from a Japan's perspective?
Yeah, they're taking it. They're taking them very seriously. They always take under Hajime Moriyasu, the coach, who I'm personally a big fan of. This, as always in football these days, there are people that don't like him because he doesn't pick the players they like, or he doesn't play, all out attacking football in every single game. I think he's done incredibly well in his time in charge. And they recently had what's it called, the E1 EAFF East Asian Football Championship, which again they tend to send domestic players. Japan and South Korea send. China were there, Hong Kong were there, and even for that tournament, the emphasis is placed on every game. The JFA and Moriyasu see every single game, every single training camp between World Cups as an opportunity to build towards the World Cup, to see what their players are able to bring or not able to bring, how they work together. And I think they'll do exactly the same. As you said, this is now they're getting the chance to play against opposition they wouldn't normally face. Strong opposition that they could get in the World Cup quite easily. And he's taking a strong squad. There's a few players that are out. Kota Takai obviously recently transferred to Tottenham. He isn't in the squad. Takehiro Tomiyasu's been injured seemingly forever. He isn't involved. Koki Machida, Hiroki Ito as well. So the defense isn't, I would say, assuming everybody's fit, this isn't going to be the best. This isn't going to be their first choice defense at the World Cup. But in terms of who's available, they're all there. And in midfield, Hidemasa Morita, Ao Tanaka isn't there. Keito Nakamura, who's sort of the backup to Kaoru Mitoma on the left side. I think there's talk about him possibly transferring to a new club, so he isn't involved in the squad this time either. But other than that, everybody's there. Zion Suzuki's in the squad. Yeah, Endo, who's not been playing at all for Liverpool, so there are slight question marks over here about if he's going to continue playing. Is he going to continue as the captain for the game against, I want to say Indonesia, the last qualifier? He wasn't the captain. Takefusa Kubo was. So there was a sign there that maybe Moriyasu was trying to send a bit of a warning to Endo. But yeah, Mitoma, Kubo, Ayase Ueda's been in good form recently, scoring goals in Holland. So it's a strong squad, and they won't, the result ultimately doesn't really matter. I think they'll be more concerned with the performance and how the players acquit themselves. Of course, they want to win. So I wouldn't say they don't care. They're just friendlies. They'll be treating them very seriously. But at the same time, as I'm sure will be the case for America too, it's a step on the way towards the World Cup for the coaches.
Yeah, even though our coach decided to leave like 10 to 12 players at home for some reason, it's a very that's when I talked about MLS. There are MLS players that should be in the roster, goalkeeper especially for the US, some defenders too, like Tim Ream, but he did leave players out of the roster that would be considered important. But if he does put the best starting 11 possible, it's mostly European players. We'll see how it goes for the US. We've been very shaky the past 12 to 24 months. Very bad, actually. Copa America at home, we lost in the group stage, right? There's been some really bad results. And it does make me a bit scared of how it can go, because the last time we played Japan right before World Cup, Japan beat the United States 2-0 in 2022, and Japan ran circles around the US. It was 2-0, and it felt like Japan just kind of like held back. It's like 2-0 is fine. They could have gone for 3 or 4, maybe out of respect, or maybe just it is what it is. And that's my fear. Now we play in the US, so we'll see if that plays a role, even though we usually don't have home crowd advantage here. But Sean, that was mostly it. We got a good insight on the Japanese national team, a little bit of J-League too that you dove into there. And thank you very much.
No worries at all. Pleasure to help out.
And everyone, make sure to follow Sean on X. It's right below his head right there, the handle. Thank you very much, everyone. All right, everyone. Thank you very much for watching. Don't forget to drop a like before you go. I'll see you all on Tuesday, which I believe is tomorrow or today, depending on when you're watching this video. And that's all. Thank you very much, Mantis Leaf, for sponsoring this video. Thank you for watching, and have a great day.